What's going on, everyone? Today is February 6, 2024. My name is Anthony Santini. You are tuned in to the Invested in Hockey podcast. I'm joined here with
Eric Wilson.
And today we're going to be talking about the NHL and what was a very productive weekend. Pretty solid weekend. I mean, that was an amazing All-Star game, I'd say.
Yeah. An entire weekend, absolutely amazing. 10 out of 10 in my eyes. I don't know if anyone has any disagreements with that, but all positives in my head.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the better All-Star games that we've seen in a couple years. Obviously, there's been a couple All-Star games that have kind of stood out, like especially that John Scott. There's a lot of talk of that this weekend, but I'd say all around the All-Star game went well. Like there was a lot of implications to it, like a little bit of a, sense of reward for some players, obviously, like Connor McDavid winning that $1 million. But we're going to kind of break down and take a look at everything that happened in the All-Star game, what we thought about it, and what they can kind of do as we look not for next year, but the year after that, if there will be an All-Star game and what that might look like. But without further ado, let's kind of look at how our weekend started before that All-Star game. So what did we get up to this weekend?
You know what? Honestly, starting off on Friday, nice to get out of the house. At night, I wore a Willie jersey out.
There we go.
Went out for the night with a couple of guys, including you, and that was pretty awesome. Worked a bit this weekend, just the usual, and then kind of just got ready for the week. It's already been a productive week, but I know there's a lot ahead. So how about you?
Yeah, it was chill. I mean, like you mentioned, that party. Obviously, you wore the Nylander jersey, which is pretty sweet, that number 88. But it was cool because usually every dude that goes to a party, they just want to throw on like a simple sports jersey, and it kind of like completes a fit. You know what I mean? Like the classic, like white Air Forces, jeans, and like a Leafs, or like even like we saw Goldberg have like the Vladdy jersey, just like the classic Blue Jays with the jeans and white Air Force fit. Dudes love that. But I mean, there's a lot of cool jerseys that I saw. So if you guys are ever thinking of throwing a party, and obviously if you're gonna invite us, definitely make it a jersey party, because I thought that kind of added a little bit of an extra incentive to go. I think the coolest jersey that I saw though was probably that Byfield, the guy that had the Clinton Byfield LA Kings jersey, because you don't really see, when it comes to hockey jerseys, you only really see like Matthews, McDavid, and stuff like that.
That was my first time seeing a Byfield jersey, at least like in person. I mean, I guess we want to keep it to hockey, but there was a nice Giannis Bucks jersey.
I saw that. That was Monik had that. He had like the Greek Giannis jersey. That was sweet.
Like a lot of cool jerseys, and whether you're doing a Super Bowl party or a party, a house party, whatever it is, whether there's alcohol involved or not, like it's fun to do a nice theme there. So
yeah, spice it up a little bit too. If you're going to a party, especially a jersey party, don't wear the classic Blue Jays jersey. I know I have one too, but it's just like I see way too many of them. Although the jerseys are nice, and lots of Blue Jay fans out there, but we can't be doing that. But it was a sweet party for sure. Kind of looking at the Saturday, that was we laid low a little bit, chilled out, got a lot of homework done, which is always nice to do, because I'm looking at my week this week, and it's a little bit chiller.
I won't let you bring up your 8 a.m. this week. I won't let you mention that. So.
Oh, yeah, brutal. I got the 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, which always...
Hey, I know you're really stoked about that, but I did forget to mention this Sunday, so I'll let you kind of talk about that a little.
Yeah, so after Saturday, which was kind of chill, we got up early Sunday. You went to work early, 7 o'clock. I got my nice little sleep in, woke up at like 10:30, headed to the card show, the one M&L card show in, is it Ontario Street, I think?
Yeah, Ontario Street.
So it's like 327 Ontario Street in St. Catharines. But once every month, usual card show, saw all the boys there, chatted with everyone. But one thing that we did see, some guy that was set up at the table, he had, I didn't see too much about it, but it was like a hockey hardware game or something like that.
Yeah, so I went by the table. First off, I saw his jersey, and I was like, oh, it looks... The jersey looks very similar to the Henderson Silver Knights in the AHL and their jerseys. So I mentioned that to him. I was like, are you a brand related to the a team or something? And then I saw the game on the table, and honestly, probably the coolest game that I've ever seen that I haven't played, if that makes sense. So pretty much this game's called Hockey Hardware, and they currently have a pledge going on their website. Hockey Hardware, they have Instagram as well, and hopefully we can have them on the podcast at some point, but it's an official game, hockeyhardware.com, and the current pledge is on Kickstarter right now, and they want to bring this game to life. They have an official trailer. Again, it's very new, but the idea around this is around fantasy hockey. So kind of like how we had a big debate last week, we talked about fantasy players and their relevance in the real world. This game pretty much values fantasy hockey aspects. I'll just mention one aspect of that, which is like the waiver wire. So obviously a waiver wire is when you can add players who are available and pretty much involve them in a transaction. So you add them onto your team for a specific day or a specific week. But honestly, really cool game, really cool colors, and we're excited to hopefully work with them at some point. So shout out to Hockey Hardware.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, they do have that pledge, which has 12 days and 4 hours left on it. So hit up their website, hockeyhardware.com. We will be chatting with them in the future and hopefully playing a couple games because it did look like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what the weekend looked like for us. Obviously, we're going to get into that All-Star topic, but first we want to talk about a rematch. The Vancouver Canucks are going to be visiting the Boston Bruins this Thursday, February 8th at 7 p.m. So, Eric, if you want to kick that off for us.
Yeah, I think I'm just super excited because a few weeks ago we were talking about two of the top teams in the league playing when it was the Bruins and the Jets. This feels like almost a month ago now, but as we look today, the two teams tied for first in the league are the Bruins and the Canucks with 71 points in 49 games. They're top of the league, and I don't think anyone would have predicted both of these teams to be 1 and 2. I genuinely don't think it'd be possible to predict that, but I'm really excited for this game just because these teams don't play each other much, right? Like honestly, they barely ever play each other. I want to say once to twice every year, one home game, one away game, and they do pretty well against each other. I want to say like the last few years, it's been less competitive in Vancouver, and I think the Bruins probably had a big one last year. I don't remember when that was, but I'm excited for this just because it's a game you don't always watch. Like I don't watch many Canucks games, and when I do, it's against your classic Oilers or Flames. Like this is a totally different matchup. We're gonna see what the Canucks are made of, and hopefully what the Bruins are made of, in my eyes. But yeah, like reminiscing back to 2011, that's kind of like I was only a Bruins fan for a few years at the time. I don't know about you. Obviously, you're a Bruins fan too, but it was at that point where like it was the prime Bruins, Milan Lucic, Nathan Horton, and then you're playing guys like Kevin Bieksa, who now is obviously a big podcast guy, big Sportsnet guy. He's always on air, so like it just makes you think of like the great days, right?
No, exactly. And like you mentioned, so the Vancouver Canucks in the past, I want to call it around 13 years, so since the 2010-11 season, are 10-10 against the Bruins. So these guys are dead locked in, even. Every matchup you can always count to be close, good, whatever you want to call it, exciting. So I'm definitely looking forward to that matchup. Another incentive to go and watch that is Elias Lindholm's second game. So he's going to kind of get his feet wet tonight versus the Carolina Hurricanes.
Oh, yeah.
The Vancouver Canucks aren't home for a little bit, but they will be visiting the Bruins, and that's going to be Elias Lindholm's first time playing in TD Garden wearing a Vancouver Canucks jersey.
Huge.
We could touch up on that trade. I don't know if you want to talk about that before we move
on. It is posted on our page for anyone who wants to kind of look at the details. It's a little big for us to just mention right on the pod, but I will first mention that his game tonight is against his team that drafted him, the Carolina Hurricanes. That's pretty damn sick. So I guess to get into the trade, we saw a classic hockey trade that you don't always get to see. Like it was a clean trade where you have two, I want to say well-known names. I know Kuzmenko's not super well-known, but you basically had an Elias Lindholm for Kuzmenko plus kind of trade, and we saw that Elias Lindholm was the top of the trade board for a while, and I think that's why like Vancouver kicked tires, just because they saw that we're 50 games into the season almost, and if we don't get a guy like Lindholm now, who are we going to get in a few weeks, right? We see a guy like Monahan's gone now too, but I think that trade was fair. I don't really have like a opinion on who won, but I think it's fair.
Yeah, we don't usually see in the NHL or even in business in general, like when we talk cards or whatever it is, like you don't see a deal that is always just 50-50 fair. And I feel like although this deal kind of leans for me a little bit towards Calgary, and that is because at the end of the season, I believe Lindholm's a free agent. I think he's an RFA, which kind of is in the favor of the Canucks. But at the same time, for the Calgary Flames, obviously receiving, so the trade details were Calgary receives Kuzmenko, two defenseman prospects who are both playing pretty well, and a 2024 first-round and 2024 fourth round pick.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely a big haul for Lindholm, but for me, that's kind of the price that has to be paid for a center of his caliber that could play those first line minutes. Definitely something that, going into the trade deadline that is March 8th, I believe, will be a trend for a lot of teams looking for center depth and definitely looking to push their chips to the center and go all in.
Yeah, to talk about all in, that's kind of like, I don't know, this Canucks team's obviously the best team we've seen in a while, but I think it's going to be like the best regular season Canucks team we see in a long time. Like, I just think that being first in the West is an incredible accomplishment. I think I don't know how to say it, but I think it's a lot harder than being first in the East is, and part of that is just to do with the inconsistency in the East usually. Like, you always have teams like Tampa, Toronto near the top, but it seems like the playoffs is where it really matters in the East. But then for the West, it's like, okay, like, wow, this team's a powerhouse. They're top 3 in the thing. Like, obviously Colorado is one of those teams that usually is up there, and it's like, wow, they're a powerhouse just because of their regular season finish, but it's like it's more wide open in the East. Like, a good example being Florida beating Boston in the first round last year. Like, you know what I'm trying to say there?
Oh, yeah, there's definitely a lot of firepower in the West right now. And to see the Canucks making a big move, it almost makes teams like Colorado or Edmonton, maybe even a team like Vancouver, kind of take a step back and say, okay, you know what? We're not just going to be, we're not like this play that we have right now. This roster might not be sufficient because of how well other teams are playing. We need to go out and we need to make moves. And looking at another trade that happened, we saw the Winnipeg Jets acquire Sean Monahan, which we're going to get into later as well. We had a caller chat a little bit about that. But for me, talking about that trade, another deal that just kind of I think is going to work out for both teams. Like, for both GMs, after shaking hands, you got to turn around and both of them kind of have a smile on their face, I'm sure. Not in a way that, I just finessed the other franchise, but, I think that was a fair deal. I feel pretty good about it. What do you think?
Yeah, but I totally agree. The best interests of each team. It's pretty interesting to note. I think that out of the 2 trades that happened for Monahan in the last little while, I believe that Montreal gets 2 firsts in total because it's like the 1 plus the 1, and it really just says a lot about a player's value based on their contract, right? And it's like Monahan's value, a lot of it comes from the term and the contract that he's on. So like, I love the trade for Winnipeg in the sense that I think Monahan is going to play a role that Paul Stastny used to play on that team. And I don't know if you remember his impact, but he was a veteran. He did well for them. He kind of filled that role that like Brian Little used to have when he was kind of on the decline. But Winnipeg needs that. Again, like, if you want to compete in the West, you need to be able to beat the top teams. And although I'm not able to predict the future, I like 99% think there's going to be a first round matchup that includes two of these 3 teams: the Jets, the Oilers, and the Canucks. Canadian matchup, I don't know why I'm feeling that, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, definitely a juiced up matchup for sure. And like you said, I can confirm that Sean Monahan has been worth 2 first-round picks for the Montreal Canadiens. So definitely some savvy moves by the GM over there. And when you look at Sean Monahan, I know a lot of people weren't impressed with what he went for because, you don't look at Sean Monahan and say we want to give up a first-round pick for him. But when you really break it down and you look at the details, so first of all, the cost of Sean Monahan for the Winnipeg Jets was a first-round pick and a conditional third-round pick. That condition, you might ask, is worth a Stanley Cup. So if the Winnipeg Jets do win a Stanley Cup this season, then Montreal will receive a 2027 third-round pick.
Okay.
So a little interesting, gives the Jets 3 years to kind of recoup that pick if something does happen. Obviously, if something does happen, they win a Stanley Cup. So a great trade for me. And then even looking, like you said, his salary, what he makes, the AAV is just so low, just slightly under $2 million for a player that could borderline step up and command that first-line center role. Obviously, you have Scheifele, Perfetti fighting for that center role. But, in the playoffs, you almost need 3 lines that are ready to go, and then that 4th line that could kind of hold it down for 40 to 55 seconds on a shift. So very impressed with that Winnipeg Jets trade and very, very impressed with the Montreal Canadiens and what they've brought to kind of their rebuild.
Yeah. I think I'm glad we can talk about that rebuild in a bit for the Habs, just because we're only in the year 2024, but in a few years that could look so different for the Habs, the Jets, whatever team. We don't know who's going to be rebuilding in that time, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. But at least for Montreal, you can kind of look at all the positives that have happened in the past couple months, even like the last year, obviously drafting pretty well. So if you're a Montreal fan, you have to be pretty ecstatic. And if you are a Montreal resident, you have to be even more excited just because next year it's been announced, it's official. The Four Nations Faceoff will happen. So it will be in Montreal and the other location will be in Boston. So if you want to break it down for us, Eric, it will be Canada, US, Finland, and Sweden competing in this NHL only tournament.
Yeah, so the biggest thing I guess that stands out to me is it's an NHL only tournament, and like that in itself is a very controversial topic for a lot of fans. And I'm going to kind of re-loop a little bit to one of our TikToks that we posted of our roster for Team Finland. And we originally posted this roster for 2026 in the Olympics. And what we didn't consider was any players outside the NHL, and that's truly because I don't watch any Liga Finnish hockey, and I don't think you do either. And it made me really recuperate and say, okay, maybe we should have constructed this roster differently. That being said, that 2026 roster we've projected is going to look a lot closer to the 2025 one now, because European hockey will continue to run while this tournament's on, which is a little crazy to me, but the world can't stop for everything, right? So it's an interesting topic. It's a tournament that hasn't been done, but doesn't require that much planning because there's only 4 teams, right? So it's going to be a shorter tournament than a lot of hockey tournaments we see.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that if we were going to talk about anything that did happen this All-Star weekend regarding the tournament, I wanted to be able to say that I listened to a lot of what, Gary Bettman and his peers, if you want to call it, were thinking. So listening to his interview, it kind of sounded like they wanted to have just these 4 nations because obviously with the minimal amount of time there is to set up the tournament, they want to make sure it runs smoothly, right? They want to have firepower there, the top 4 nations, and that's it. At the end of the day, looking forward, we'll see what happens because his main goal was he wanted to have, so starting the Four Nations Faceoff, and then 2 years later he wanted to have the Olympics, 2 years later, Four Nations Faceoff, 2 years later, the Olympics. So almost like a cycle going forward of best on best international hockey. And I don't think if you kind of jump into that, adding the Czech, adding Czechia, adding Germany, all these other countries that are interested in playing and obviously do have a lot of star power, if you do add them quickly and the tournament isn't run smoothly and well, it's going to be hard for years to come, tournament to continue. So a good move by Gary Bettman, a savvy move, and I believe hockey fans are finally starting to warm up a little bit to the idea of what he's turned into a very exciting NHL season.
And yeah, it's huge for Bettman, who's obviously been around for a long time now. We were looking at that. But one thing I wasn't too sure about was how long this Four Nations Face-Off would last. If it would just be a one-time NHL event, and if it would lead to the World Cup of Hockey being called the World Cup of Hockey in those 2 years other than the Olympics, right?
Well, I think that's what their goal was to have. That's what he was talking about. So having that, I guess, Four Nations Face-Off / World Cup of Hockey is what they're interested in doing again. And then 2 years later having the Olympics. So it's almost like, I don't know. I mean, I guess, you are a soccer fan watching the Euro Cup and then watching the World Cup. So that happens every 2 years, I'm pretty sure.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I was literally talking to someone about that today. That's hilarious.
An interesting kind of tactic to kind of just take on from one of the most watched sports in the entire world, I'd say.
Yeah.
So a good move by Gary Bettman. And finally, we will be seeing best on best hockey, which I'm sure every hockey fan could go to work this morning, smile about, and, be proud that we're gonna finally watch some good hockey here.
I know. I'm stoked, and again, nothing beats a hockey when you can know that you're not just gonna be watching it one day, but it's gonna be on 7 days from that time, right? It's like watch the first game knowing that there's a round robin, there's gonna be semis / finals. It's great to know that there's hockey coming up and that it's scheduled to happen and it will happen, right?
Exactly.
So
A lot of good hockey, too. So 2026, the NHL will be joining the Olympics, and 2030. One of the biggest conversations, I think, for Gary Bettman and his crew was, who will be paying for this tournament? How will this benefit the NHL? And when they looked at it, I believe that IIHF stepped up and said, you know what, we will be taking the bill for this one. And it's always nice when someone says, I'll grab the bill. So I think Gary Bettman was very happy when he heard that, because that was one of the biggest discussions. Another one was the television rights, so how the NHL can use the footage from this tournament. So all these little things Gary was saying will be developed slowly, but at the end of the day, he was saying, let's all be happy. It's been announced. It's official. And we'll take it day by day from here on out. So I'm very ecstatic about it. I'm very excited. And I'm most definitely looking forward to scoop either a Connor McDavid Team Canada jersey or an Austin Matthews Team USA jersey.
Ooh.
I just haven't decided yet.
I know. That's a debate in itself of like, if you're gonna rep a Team USA jersey, it almost has to be Austin Matthews, and if you rep a Team Canada jersey, it could be anybody. So if you're really stoked for Matthews, it's kind of the one guy you could get. On my mind, I wouldn't mind a Charlie McAvoy Team USA
That would
jersey.
be pretty cool. Even just getting like any sort of jersey of like these, they're all star players either way. You can't really go wrong. And we've had so many discussions about just what jerseys to buy. And this weekend we were going back and forth for so long. And I finally started to warm up to the NHL All-Star Game jerseys, because there was, I believe, blue, red, white, and yellow. And I think I kind of made my decision. I want to get a white one. I'm going to get probably a David Pastrnak jersey or McDavid. Yeah. And I think it might be a trend a little bit, especially if
such a trend.
2 years where you can get NHL All-Star Game jerseys, because you got the one last year of McDavid. It was so sick. Yeah. So I think I got to kind of hop on the bandwagon. But like we said we want to take a look at the NHL All-Star Game as a whole, because we didn't really miss much. And for me, just to kind of put it out there, I was very impressed with the NHL. I was very excited. I liked it, and I was, I was impressed with how it went.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I'll start with the one thing that I liked about the All-Star Game. It's going to be a lot easier for me to say what I liked rather than what I disliked. But I think the one thing I liked was the competitive edge in those close games for not only the All-Star games on Saturday, but also that PWHL game where it was close enough where you got to watch good hockey and you saw, players try a few things, but it wasn't a joke and it wasn't just loosey-goosey hockey. So that was probably my like.
Well, actually, I don't know if you're too much of a Elliot Friedman guy, but you know me, I always listen to his podcast. Yeah. And listening to his podcast yesterday at the gym, he was chatting about how there was, quote unquote, a couple complaints about Team Matthews with their face-off tactic. So I guess they were getting a little bit savvy, maybe using the opportunity of lightness from referees where, referees aren't really buckling down on who has their stick down first, cheating a little bit before the face-off. So, you don't really want to be that guy that kind of flat out says like, okay, what are you guys doing? It's just an all-star game. But it turns out that after the tournament was done, there was a couple whispers coming through the cracks saying, Team Matthews really took that thing serious. I mean, how can you not take it serious? In your own town, we saw Austin Matthews win the MVP, score that amazing goal on Hullebuck right in the middle of the slot, just winds up a clap bomb. Yeah. It was hilarious.
That was really nice to see. I mean, it's like, why you kind of have to give him the MVP unless he didn't do anything. Yeah. Like, I don't know how to explain it. There's always going to be controversy, but at the end of the day, you want to make the fans happy. And does it really matter who wins the MVP? No.
Not really. I mean, obviously, the only one that really mattered to the players, I think, was the MVP technically of the skills competition, which, to touch on that a little bit, I mean, I was pretty impressed with how, exciting some of the events were. Obviously, some of the players, like we saw Kucherov, I don't want to get into it too much, but it's a little bit disappointing that a player would, kind of show up and not try and was visibly... to bring it up again, Elliot Friedman did talk about an article that was written where the title of it was Kucherov Embraces Enemy in 2026 Toronto All-Star Game. So just for a player to kind of show up, be lazy, and it's not saying like feel forced to come and try hard, but maybe, don't. I don't know how it worked. Maybe they asked him, do you want to participate? Maybe they said you are going to participate, but someone has to take a look at some of these player tendencies. Like, I could have told you that obviously Kucherov didn't want to show up and try his hardest compared to a player like Matthew Barzal. Like, I feel like that's pretty common knowledge
Yeah,
to hockey fans.
I think honestly Kucherov got stuck in that spot where he wasn't having luck with the accuracy shooting, and so he had to take it lightly. Like, if you miss 4 shots in a row on the accuracy shooting, it doesn't mean you're not trying. It's not easy to hit these targets. So it's like, I think for him, he's like, I gotta lighten the mood a little and at least make it like embrace it a little.
Yeah,
like you were saying,
you don't want to like feel like embarrassed, right?
yeah.
So.
And we saw a lot of guys lose the puck in that
Exactly.
skating thing, which again, it doesn't mean they're not trying. It's just it's almost like you gotta embrace it, and you gotta like make the fans know that you are having fun, kind of, and not just there for one of those loosey goosey skates, like I was saying.
Oh, most definitely. I thought the All-Star Game skills competition went very well, and I know you touched on the PWHL game that happened. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about it, but I know you were talking very highly of the opportunity that these players were given, because I think for sure it was definitely a great idea to bring them on and kind of not like, what's the best word to say? Maybe like expose them a little bit more to an audience that is there to watch the male aspect of the All-Star Game, but also giving them the opportunity to watch the very talented PWHL females that were playing. And I thought it was a great, idea, whosever idea it was, and the game went really well. Like, there was a lot of star power playing in that game.
Yeah, a lot of star power. I don't know who my kind of standout was in that game, just because it was some really nice goals. Obviously, there was the hat trick we saw there, but to watch PWHL hockey and see, call it the best players, is just great for, attention and marketing and promotional things. And for me, I really would like to learn more about each team. And I know there's 6, I believe, but I don't know enough about each team. And so watching that, I at least had a sense of where these players came from, their origins, whether they played in the NCAA, maybe how old they were, right? A lot of them are still in their 20s, which is crazy. Yeah. So for me, it was about like trying to learn those little things that you don't always need to ask questions for, right? So it was a good game. It was Team Kloss versus Team King, and I believe Team King won 6-3. I think 5-3. Yeah, sorry, not 6-1, but 5-3. And honestly, great opportunity for the PWHL. It leaves room for more too. That's the biggest thing. Is
exactly it's kind of like an open-ended question. Like, where does the PWHL go from here? And one of the biggest things was when the PWHL started, there's a lot of questions regarding how the NHL and the PWHL would work in harmony, and it seems like they're doing just that, because the NHL is embracing the sport, which is very exciting, and it almost gives the opportunity to kind of influence younger females that want to play the game. So for me, we won't talk about it for too long because I know we could talk forever about it, but I was very impressed with the move. And like you were talking about, some of your favorite players from the PWHL is, me, I'm a big Renata Fast fan. So I thought she was playing pretty well. And I don't know, Marie-Philippe Poulin, can't go wrong with her. Obviously, you don't see a lot of maybe extreme effort coming from these players in an All-Star game, but
good hockey, great hockey, and
exactly.
Kind of brings me to a little quick story. I know we don't have all the time in the world, but our one buddy wanted to bet on Poulin to score, and I did stop him from that. She did have 3 assists, which was pretty awesome, but I was like, listen, let's watch the game, let's enjoy. And honestly, it was pretty great to watch.
Yeah, great to watch for sure. But now we're going to transition into our Great to Hear segment, where we're going to have a couple callers that called in. We opened up the phone lines. And if you are a listener and are interested in calling in for next week's episode, send me a text, hit me up, DM us, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So first off, we're going to have caller Wilkie Matthew coming in from Mississauga. So,
hey, what's up, fellas? It's Wilkie here from Mississauga, Ontario. I just wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on the current Habs situation going on right now. Obviously, they just traded high-value center and Sean Monahan to the Winnipeg Jets. They still got some value in net and Jake Allen that I'm sure some contending teams would love to have. But I just wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on what the next moves for this team should look like moving forward, and what success looks like for this team's future. Obviously, with that young core growing up and that deep prospect pool, I just wanted to hear what you guys think, when success happens for this team and what it looks like for them, moving forward into the future. Thanks, guys. Keep up the great work.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to let you answer that question, since I know you're a big Original Six guy, so why don't you wrap that one up?
Yeah, I'm going to open up this question, and then you could kind of piggyback and see what you have to say about my take here. But I think, obviously, Wilkie, thanks for the call. I'm sure Eric appreciates it as well.
Of course.
So, I'm a big fan of what Montreal has kind of built. Obviously, they made the Stanley Cup Finals just a couple years ago, and they've transitioned to maybe not a full rebuild just because of how well some of their young talent has turned out, but definitely transitioned into more of a bubble playoff. I would say they're almost a bubble to make the playoffs, a bubble to have the first overall pick. So they're kind of in a weird spot right now. However, they're not in a weird spot where they don't have talent coming up in the minors. We've seen Owen Beck, David Reinbacher, Logan Mayu, a lot of young talent that will be playing on the team in just a couple years. So for anyone that has played poker before, you might know this phrase, but when you have pocket rockets, do you know what those are?
No clue.
It's when you have double aces. It's one of my favorite hands to have when you're playing poker. Yeah. So right now, I think the Montreal Canadiens do have pocket rockets, or as Matthew Wilkie does like to say, pocket Rockies. So
all right.
I'm very impressed with what they've done, obviously, with that Sean Monahan trade. And to kind of finalize the question that you did ask, I just think that success for the Montreal Canadiens look like – what does it look like? I think it looks like being healthy, making good trades, and having a lot of players, young players, getting development at the NHL level. So obviously Kirby Dach has been hurt, but keeping him at the NHL level, Suzuki playing, Caulfield playing, and a lot of those young guys.
Yeah, honestly, you said it all pretty well. I don't have too much to say other than I agree with the idea that you need to develop most of them at the NHL level, including Slavkovsky, including Dach. But you do need to give them some veteran support. And by losing Sean Monahan, that's the only area of concern that I can see is if you have a few veterans on that team, one being Brendan Gallagher, who is often hurt. When you have guys that are out of the lineup, like Gallagher, a guy like Monahan who's traded now, guys like Yoel Armia is a great example, but you need those guys in the lineup to not only be leaders on the ice, but in the locker room. So definitely a great question by Wilkie there. Thank you.
Yeah, so next up we're going to go with our buddy Ethan, who called in, and he is going to inquire about Matthew Boldy.
Hey boys, it's Ethan calling from Ottawa. Love the pod, love what you guys are doing. Keep it up. I just got one question for you guys today. I'm a huge Minnesota Wild fan. I love Matt Boldy. Just wanted to hear your opinions on if you think he has what it takes to take it to the next level and become that superstar, or is he always going to be in Kaprizov's shadow? Thanks, boys.
So I don't know if you want to take this one, but
yeah, I'll give a brief overview. I know you definitely followed the Wild a little. Little background. I actually was a big Wild fan growing up too when they had a lot of those veterans who are still playing. One being Zach Parise, who had his debut with the Avs last night. To get away from that and to answer your question, Ethan, it's a great question. I think that Matthew Boldy has incredible potential, but I don't think that he's going to be able to reach Kaprizov's level of talent. I think that he has what you call that grit that maybe Kaprizov has, maybe he doesn't. But I think Boldy can make just as big of an impact as Kaprizov without putting as many points on the score sheet. I think Boldy can really make the players around him better and studs, while I think Kaprizov has that 50-goal potential. And I think they're different players, which is awesome because they're both left wings. They both can play on line 1 and 2 and make their top 6 great. But honestly, when you look outside that top 6, it's a little different. So I think you need them on separate lines. I think Boldy's potential, honestly, could be I want to say 35-goal, 50-assist guy, which would be 85 points. And when I say potential, I think that would be his max potential. Now, that's kind of what I have to say about Boldy. Great question. And Anthony, if you want to talk about that too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Not too much more to say, but I do have a small announcement to actually make because there was some breaking news. And shout out me for almost being a little bit active here.
Oh.
But we do have some breaking news. And although
Wow.
this won't really break the bank, but a player has been placed on waivers and their contract has been terminated
Oh my gosh.
as of right now.
Can I guess?
Yes, I'll break it down for you a little bit. So this player does play for the Rangers, and to help you out a little bit, it seems like their contract will be terminated because they did not want to reassign to their AHL team.
Wow. Okay. That this is interesting. I thought you were gonna talk about a guy on maybe the Wild or something. I don't really have a clue. Is it Ryan Lindgren?
So the player is Nick Bonino. So he is now on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination per Elliot Friedman. So it seems like the Rangers gave him up until the All-Star break to make a decision. They were looking to send him down. And obviously for a player that's a little bit older, he's not trying to play almost like what Kyle Clifford's doing right now, making some money playing in the AHL. So maybe I don't know if he's going to hang up the skates or look to play for another team that will have him in that top 12 forward, but a little bit interesting. And I just want to shout out myself for being active on the Twitter machine as
Hey,
well.
good for you. I know you're a big Twitter guy. We've talked about it before. I got to be a little more active when it comes to maybe posting some news on our newly formed Twitter as well. But yeah,
It's all good. It's
yeah.
all good. All right, well, let's finish up with one more question coming from our buddy, also from Ottawa. Shout out Michael Delonzo for this call here.
Hey guys, Michael from Ottawa listening in here. I just recently found you guys and just want to say love the energy you're bringing, love the content. Just a quick question here about my Toronto Maple Leafs. With how well Martin Jones has stepped up in the absence of Wall, my question becomes if/when Wall does come back, like how's our goaltenders gonna look? Do you drop Samsonov back down to the Marlies? Do you drop Jones to the Marlies? Maybe put Wall there. I was not sure which two you would have, especially looking forward towards the playoffs. Thanks.
I'll let you take that one, Anthony.
Yeah, so I think obviously appreciate the call, Michael. Really good question. And I actually there's one aspect of his question that I like the most. He said if/when Joseph Wall returns, because we don't know if he will return.
Oh,
Obviously,
I know.
he is injured, which, an injury, he could wake up today, feel great, and then tomorrow wakes up, re-aggravates it. And obviously, we would not hope for that at all as, Leaf
Never.
supporters. But
Not me, but yeah.
bringing the aspect of what will happen following that, I just think that, it sucks for Martin Jones, but I don't feel like they're going to make the decision where Samsonov is not taken ahead of Martin Jones. Although he did play well, Samsonov looks like, I don't want to say he's back or it's his team again, but he is showing signs that his play has improved. And I know you are very confident to say, let's not just say he's back. Let's not say like it's his team again. Let's not say this and that. So I will say that it does look like a positive that Samsonov will be playing. So for me, I think that it will be Samsonov and Joseph Wall again. I believe his contract allows Martin Jones to be placed on waivers where any team can then go and pick him up. So I don't know if Martin Jones will be a Toronto Maple Leaf looking in the future. But if you want to touch up on this subject, go right ahead.
Yeah. Again, great question, Michael. And it's nice to talk about a guy like Martin Jones just because it's obviously there's been some quiet news. He hasn't played a game in over a week, and I actually probably over 2 weeks. You can check that for me, Sans. But I think Martin Jones deserves more hockey with the Leafs. He's shown that he can play good teams, mid teams, no matter who it is. But I agree with Sans that I think Ilya Samsonov will stay at that NHL level, which means Martin Jones may have to be sent down at some point. But with my opinion on Joseph Wall, there's no need to rush him back, and it's simply because he's only played, call it 50-something games in the NHL. Like he actually hasn't played that much hockey. While people kind of think he's that guy, I don't really know. I don't think we can really say that right now, and it's a tough topic. But it's I'm really happy you asked that question.
Yeah, it'd be hard to say because Joseph Wall's only played 26 NHL games right now, and if you look back, a lot of those I'd say has been him kind of coming in mid-game. Like I know last year in the playoffs, he probably came in and played, 2 games in relief of Samsonov, or maybe it was one where Samsonov got hurt. So last year he played 7 games for them being in the playoffs. The year before that was 4 regular season games where he did win 3 and lose 1. This year he's played 15 games. And something for me regarding Joseph Wall that has scared me a little bit is Leafs fans think he's just going to be the savior, right? Like he's just going to come in, he's going to be fantastic just like he was before. We haven't seen enough of this guy. Drafted in the 3rd round, 62nd overall, although he is a great player, I just don't know if you could put your chips in him. I don't really believe that. Like you were asking me to check up, the last game that Martin Jones did play was on January 20th. at Vancouver. And if you remember, a little bit of a barn burner. They lost 6-4. But I remember watching that game, and he did look pretty good. So I don't. You know, I didn't hate his play there, but to kind of write him off and say, thanks, bud, for the last, 2.5 weeks where we absolutely were just riding on your shoulders and we'll see you later. It looks like he might get the start at Dallas February 7th. So for me, I'm saying start with Wall. Wall's going to be the starter in the playoffs with Samsonov at the backup role. I just can't see the Leafs getting rid of Samsonov with how he's been playing.
Yeah, we'll see, right? We've seen teams make it work with more than one goalie playing in the playoffs. One example being the Caps when they had Grubauer and I'm forgetting his name. Grubauer and what's his name? Who played with Grubauer on the Caps? Whether it doesn't matter who it is. It wasn't Vanacek. Back in the day, it was before Holtby was there. The year
they won the cup?
No, back in the day. We'll have to fact check that, but that's okay. I think that's a wrap on our pod for episode 14. So appreciate all the callers. Really good questions, and we'd love to collaborate with more viewers. And yeah, thanks, Anthony.
Yeah, appreciate it, bud. That's been a pretty good podcast. Looking forward to next week for sure. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll chat next week.
For sure. Cheers.
Cheers.